guys, so today we're going to be talking about how to be that Christian girl, how to actively seek and pursue a relationship with God. Now, I know the whole idea and concept of a that girl or even a that Christian girl is very controversial in and of itself, but for me personally, when I think of that Christian girl, I think of a woman who is secure in herself because she knows who her Lord is. I look at that Christian girl as a model for how we should be as women of God. Really don't feel like it has to be limited to an aesthetic or even unrealistic expectations. This can just be something that we pursue and strive for, similar to what everyone already does with a Proverbs 31 woman model. So the first thing that really helped me get closer to God, we talk about this all the time, but number one is read your Bible daily and study it. There needs to be something that you have in your quiet time routine that can help you to go deeper. Whether that's a commentary, a study Bible, or even like a video edition of something that can help you to maybe comprehend everything a little bit more deeper. Try to study things that you wouldn't normally look for when just reading your Bible. Number two is immerse yourself in the knowledge of apologetics and theology. I started first getting into this in 2021 and it definitely really helped my walk. Of course, everything isn't about knowledge, and we don't just want to be stuffed up with all this knowledge and not know what to do with it, or just not be close to the Lord. But through apologetics, which will teach you how to defend your faith, and through theology, which will teach you more about the study of God, I really do feel like it draws you closer and it helps you to kind of just transition from being someone who reads the word to being a student of the word. I don't know, I just feel like there's something so cool when you look at it from that perspective. If you don't know where to start, one of the books that I have that I love so much is the theology book by the Daily Grace Co. I'll link it in the description box. That one is really helpful and it's also an easy read. Number three is to actively seek a church home. I have been through the struggle of what it's like trying to look for a church home that you can call your own. And while I have one at home, I don't have one at college, so I'm currently living through that as well. And one thing that I absolutely hate, well, I guess it just really hurts my heart, is when people are so rude about those who don't have a church home, because it's not always that you're trying to be disobedient and that you don't want to be in a church home. It's just that you don't want to commit to the wrong one. And of course, I do believe that as you're looking for a church home, you have to remember that every church is not going to be perfect and it's not going to meet your every desire. But I think in the process, it's important that you're actively looking and that you're not just remaining stagnant in that season. You actually have to do something about it if you do want to find a church home, even if that is church hopping. Again, I know even that is controversial, but it's like, how else are you going to find one? So do your research, talk to people, look around, see what you can find. You don't have to settle just for like, you know, the only church that's around you. Make sure that you are really intentional about this. Next is to cut out the vulgar talk. Yes, this could be cursing, but another thing that I've noticed even just being in college and being back in like a public school setting is the inappropriate talk and jokes, and those things can really go unseen. Someone makes a joke and then you laugh about it and then you go on, but that is actively corrupting your heart, and the more that you make jokes like that, the more that you kind of become desensitized to it. So cut it out. And just a reminder, if your environment is encouraging this behavior, they are not going to be able to help you to get out of it. You need to remove yourself, because you can't expect the people who are doing the thing that you're struggling with to help you get out of the thing that you're struggling with. They are not going to hold you accountable, so you have to think about what kind of representative do you want to be for Christ and his kingdom. A house is known by the company it keeps, and that can really help you when you're thinking about conversations regarding your environment and whether or not it's edifying. The next one is to stay sober-minded. I'm not just talking about drugs and alcohol, but if that is a vice for you, then stay sober-minded in that regard. I feel like the conversation of being sober-minded can also relate to how we guard our heart and our mind, because everything that you consume is going to be reflective of what is ultimately in your heart and what you're allowing into your life. So we always want to make sure that we're of good conscience, that we're setting our mind on the things above, and the only way that we can do that is if we are fully and completely immersed in all things regarding the Lord. This one is a big thing for me, and it's something that I'm still working on, and I know a lot of women have trouble with, but it's to stop people pleasing. I feel like everyone's level of people pleasing can be on a different spectrum. If you're in college, for one person it could be people pleasing just on the small level of fear of missing out. Maybe you want to please someone and you want to be there, not even in an environment that is bad bad, but maybe you just have things to do and things that you need to steward and tend to. But there's all this, you know, stuff going on around campus and you don't want to miss out. That could be a way that you people please and you don't even realize it. And I know another big one is people pleasing with your mindset. Confidence as Christian women is really important, and it doesn't have to be something that is just so haughty and prideful. God calls us to have discernment, and even the Proverbs 31 woman was filled with wisdom. So I think as we read the Bible, we'll come to find out that we will gain more discernment. Sometimes that might take walking through a difficult situation and then you come out the other end of it and you've just gained a lot more perspective. But I just really encourage all of you guys to be confident in your decision making and not feel like you have to be a doormat. About being a Christian is just that sometimes you are not going to be liked, and we have to be okay with that. This doesn't mean that you need to always view yourself as right. I feel like a lot of times in discernment it can be coming from those moments where we say, hey, I was wrong. But if you have taken the time to seek the Lord and you have brought all of your questions and your fears and your worries up to him, and you've made a decision with God and you know that to be true, don't go back on that just because you're trying to people please. The next one is to build a routine. Even if it's just waking up an hour earlier than the time you usually get up to read your Bible and pray, do that. Just have a routine that fits within your schedule that can help you to do the things that you enjoy and relax, but also be productive at the same time. The more that I think about this semester, the more that I think about the kind of things that I want to bring before the Lord and how I want to be pleasing to him. Again, that's the sort of things that I'm talking about when I say let's be those Christian girls. And having something that you can consistently come back to really can help you get into a specific set of ideals that kind of just carry you throughout the day. I feel like it also helps to limit distractions if you know, hey, this is what I told myself that I was going to do today and this is what is getting done. The next thing is pretty self-explanatory, but go through your playlist and delete the music that isn't glorifying to God. Not everyone is going to be called to stop listening to secular music or even to do a secular music fast. I've seen a lot of Christians can get, you know, kind of self-righteous about, hey, like, you listen to secular music, I don't, and that makes me better than you. That's not the mindset that we should have, and I feel like any sort of thinking along those lines can really put us in a legalistic sort of headspace. However, I do think it's important that if we do listen to secular music, that music be something that isn't going to fill our minds and our hearts with all of this crud and junk. Just remember that we're not all going to hold the same convictions. The next one is to stop making excuses. I was listening to this Elizabeth Elliot talk, and she was just discussing how sometimes we'll bring these, you know, really drastic claims before the Lord, and through that he's going to test us to see the validity of those claims. And we just want to make sure that as we're vowing things to the Lord, or even as we're trying to grow stronger in our faith, that we don't make excuses, that we do what needs to get done. Even if it's hard, even if we're tested through it, excuses are probably going to be the one thing that leads us into sin and leads us away from the Lord. Because at the end of the day, we're just justifying our flesh and ourself, and we're wanting to please it. Giving up the right to ourself is something that we have to do daily. When Jesus died on the cross, he asked the Lord if there was any other way to fulfill his will. Still, Christ was so obedient in the fact that he submitted to that. And a lot of people can be like, oh my gosh, like Jesus didn't want to die on the cross. If you had to go through those excruciating things that he had to, you would probably feel the same way. And honestly, when I think of that, I feel like it's so beautiful because we see the humanness of Jesus Christ. Next thing is to heed the Lord's calling. You need to step into what God has for you. And I know that sounds like some really like 2023 language, but sometimes we can be so afraid to walk into what the Lord is preparing us for, even if those are good things. A lot of times it's just out of fear, and we were not called to a life of fear. It's kind of funny because a lot of times we'll ask the Lord to, you know, do these great things for us, whether it's an opportunity to speak on the gospel, and then we have that opportunity and then we get scared and we're like, okay God, like I actually have to do this. Just remember that with whatever God has called you to, he's also going to lead you there, and he's going to be walking alongside you. God equips us. This kind of goes back to the talk about environments, but remove stumbling blocks in your life. Also, keep note, you might be a stumbling block for another person. I've had to realize that in a lot of situations, and it might not even be things that are just like so bad, but always be aware of your attitude and the types of things that you are presenting before people. In the same manner, be aware of the people that you're letting into your circle. Consider, what is getting in the way of me and God? And if there is something, be gone with it. And lastly, this is so important, but walk closely and intentionally with other believers. I feel like the part about intentionality is really important because a lot of times we might have Christian friends in our lives, but we're not being intentional about those relationships. Whether it's how productive the conversations are, where you spend your time, and how you spend your time, we need to be more intentional about those things. As I say all the time, we were not meant to walk this thing alone. That is all that I have for you guys for this video today. I hope that y'all enjoyed, and I hope these tips were helpful. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comment section down below, and I will see y'all in the next video.